Now I'm live on YouTube. And live on Twitch. Hello everyone and welcome to the weekly Wednesday lunchtime live stream here on twitch.tv/DDOstream, youtube.com/DungeonsandDragons/live, facebook.com/DDOunlimited. Really appreciate it if you would give us a follow, subscribe to us on YouTube to get our videos in your subscription feed, or like us on Facebook for a whole bunch of reasons, one of which being the ability to see these videos live every Wednesday for the weekly Wednesday lunchtime live stream. We are going to be doing something a little different today. We're not going to be questing on, I think next is Caneth, which will probably be in a week or two before we really get to that one, because we have got a big update happening. Lamania last night went live with our first systems preview of Update 39. This does not include White Plume Mountain or the new quest. That'll be coming in a future Lamania update. But today we do have the system stuff. That means enhancement trees and loot and a whole bunch of other goodies. And we've got a couple of devs from the team here stopping by to say hello, to talk a little bit about it. We're going to go through it on the forums. We'll show you some stuff on the Lamania client as well. Quick note though, if you are previewing this on Lamania, there is one thing that is different this time around, and that is that you need to re-download Lamania from scratch. There was a little bit of a technical issue that came up as we were prepping U39 to get ready for last night's preview, and so we had to kind of start fresh on Lamania, which means a fresh install of the game client as well. Now you don't need to do this all the time, this is a pretty rare occurrence, but it is something that happens. So if you want to join us on Lamania here for this and subsequent previews, you are going to need to download a new Lamania client once. Once you delete your current build and get the new Lamania client, you should be good. But you can't just patch up, in other words. You got to start fresh. So, without further ado, let's get someone on the live stream here today. Steelstar, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. Glad to have you here. Really appreciate it. We are going to, like I said, go through the enhancement trees here a little bit, because I know that you have been doing a whole bunch of stuff and keeping busy, frankly. So.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And let me try to deal with Twitch. Why is this scrolling not scrolling? Alright, well, I'm going to have to do this the hard way by just dropping in links to each individual chat. So why don't we start with the new one here, because we have got a new enhancement tree that has been, frankly, some time in the works.
We've had the third favorite soul tree, Beacon of Hope, in the pipeline for quite a while now, but it's finally been implemented. It's making its way to Lamania, and people are getting their first chance to play through it now.
Cool, and I'm actually just calling up this tree. You can find all this on the Lamania forums if you want to play the home game while we go through this stuff here today. Alright, so the Beacon of Hope tree, you said the primary goal, because now Favored Soul's already got 2 trees, but this is really specifically kind of a healing-focused tree.
Right. So the 2 existing trees that Favored Souls have had for a long, long time, Angel of Vengeance, which is the offensive spellcasting nuking tree, and then War Soul, which was originally Warpriest, which is more of a weapon-based combat tree. So with this tree, we tried to play into another role for Favored Souls, which is healing and support. Okay.
And this is really the first time that the public has had an opportunity to see this. This has gone through several rounds with the Players' Council and all that sort of thing, and it is set to arrive here with Update 39. So let's kind of go through the cores here. Now, we have 4 trees to get through, so we're not going to go through every one as in-depth as we do the Beacon of Hope, but we are going to go through on the Beacon of Hope because it is a brand new tree here. So the core's Pleasant Disposition. For each core ability you get, you're going to get a plus 1% positive spell critical chance, plus 10 healing amplification, and plus 5 positive spell power. So if you go through all 6 cores of this tree, you're looking at a pretty significant bump, not just in positive spell critical chance, which affects healing, but also healing amplification and positive spell power in general.
Right. Each of those cores, not necessarily a big buff, but if you're taking all 6 of them, it's a pretty substantial gain in terms of your ability to heal and be healed.
All right, the second core, Beacon of Grace, it costs a few spell points. You and allies ahead of you heal for 1 point of positive energy per favored soul level. Undead enemies ahead of you take the same amount of damage, similar to other healing. Both scale with your positive spell power. This ability is considered a first level favored soul spell of the Conjuration School for things that might affect that. Now, this is the first time we've had this kind of ability, and that this is really sort of a cone of healing?
Yeah. One of the things we knew we wanted to do approaching this as a primary healing tree is give favored souls the opportunity to heal differently. To do so in a way that doesn't just make them feel like a discount cleric or something that they could do without taking the tree. So Beacon of Grace and then Beacon of Hope, the secondary version of it that we'll get to a little higher in the cores, have essentially the same dimensions as a Cone of Cold spell, but healing allies and damaging undead enemies in that space, as well as yourself.
So this is kind of a basic question, but this is kind of an important thing to understand for those who maybe haven't done a lot of healing. How does healing amplification work? What does it actually do? Is it something that the healer wants or that the person being healed wants?
It's something that the person being healed wants. Healing amplification. So when a healer casts a spell on you, let's say you're a fighter in a party with a healer. The healer casts their spell. It is magnified by positive spell power, by the heal skill, and so on. And that gets it to a certain power level, and then they cast it on you, and then that value of healing coming in from the spell is increased based on your healing amp. So the person being healed wants healing amp so that every time they get healed for more.
Yeah, more is generally better, specifically when it comes to staying alive. All right, Shining Light is our third core. Whenever you cast one of your beacons or use Flight of Glory, you and affected allies get a sacred bonus 2 healing amplification equal to your favorite soul level for 12 seconds. Enemies in the zone of effect are dazzled and take a penalty to attack spot search. These enemies are illuminated by Shining Light, dispelling stealth and visibility blur displacement for 10 seconds and giving a big penalty to hide. Sightless enemies are immune to it. So really it's a bit of a semi-blinding effect here. Presumably we're talking non-bosses here, right?
Non-bosses, although I think bosses may be illuminated by some of the visual effects of this. Okay. So the easiest way to break down this ability, there's a lot to it here. There's two main components. One is Healing Amp, which we just talked about. When you cast Beacon of Grace or the upgrade Beacon of Hope that we are about to talk about, your allies get more Healing Amp. That's great. Enemies that are in your healing cone essentially take the effects of the Fairy Fire spell, which dispels a whole bunch of effects that would make them hidden or harder to hit, as well as illuminates them with, in this case, kind of whitish yellow sparkles, making them much easier to see in dark spaces. So with this ability, you're helping your allies and you're debuffing your enemies, and you're clearly marking out where enemies nearby are, making them easier for allies to spot and to hit.
I guess there's an elephant in the room, and that is nomenclature. We have the beacon/bacon of hope. Now we have sparkles and sprinkles. I mean,
oh, yeah.
What's the deal with this, right? This is the tastiest tree.
Yeah, I mean, since this has sort of come up as I've been building this tree, I kind of want to go back and rename things to just lean into it now.
Exactly right. All right, so the next fourth core here is an upgraded version of the Beacon of Grace, which is a cone of healing, essentially. It has a higher spell point cost. Also take the dispelling effects of a Panacea, Restoration, and Remove Paralysis. Heal for 5 points of positive energy per favored soul level. Damages undead. It's a 5th level favorite soul spell of the Conjuration School. So really just kind of a ramped up version that also has things like Panacea, and Restoration, and Remove Paralysis.
This is the same dimensions, casting time, etc. as Beacon of Grace. It's on a longer cooldown, but it does 5 times as much healing to people in the cone, and it dispels just an absolute bucket of negative effects from your allies. So if your party's getting run into the ground by CC and you've got this ready to go, you fire it out, you get behind your party, you fire it out, and they get a lot of that CC and debuffs cleared and get a big heal at the same time and are ready to go. Plus, again, you're debuffing enemies that are in that cone because you already took the core below this.
I'm trying to remember on restoration. Oh yeah, a single negative level as well. So it won't get rid of all your negative levels, but it will get rid of some of them.
Yeah,
so,
it'll help some.
Yeah. And of course, it has a fairly low cooldown, so you can theoretically be casting this once about every 30 seconds.
Right. Beacon of Grace, the lower one, has a 6-second cooldown.
Yeah,
Yes.
6. Right.
The Beacon of Hope has a 30-second cooldown. It's about 5 times as powerful as Beacon of Grace, but it has a longer cooldown.
And it only costs 30 spell points.
Yeah, they're relatively inexpensive, especially for favored souls who tend to have a lot of spell points.
We should bring this up because I know it's a question that's going to come up. How do metamagics affect this?
Oh, these 2 beacons are, let's see if I can remember. They are affected by Empower Healing. They are affected by Quicken, which makes them very speedy to cast.
Yep.
And they are affected by Heighten and Embolden, which really only affect the DCs if you're casting them on Undead.
Okay.
I think that is it.
All right, so the 5th core here is Flight of Glory. When you use your Leap of Faith, which is an ability favored souls get at level 17, nearby allies gain temporary hit points equal to triple your character level plus an additional 50. So the Leap of Faith is really the favored souls version of Abundant Step, and really I'm imagining allies in that path are going to get this boost.
So the way it actually breaks down is it's allies at the end of your jump.
Oh, okay.
So you leap forward with the Leap of Faith, and then at the point where you end that, those temporary hit points are deployed. And if you use this as a healer, it's very useful in terms of there are allies that are not quite close enough for you to, say, hit with Beacon of Grace or Beacon of Hope. You can use your Leap of Faith to get to them. They'll get a couple of temporary hit points, which hopefully will sustain them long enough for you to throw out one of your other healing spells.
This one's from Facebook, a question about that kind of sparkle effect, that dazzling, semi-blinding effect. Will it impact, say, Hateful Stares, the fairly tough mobs from
I
U38
don't
here?
think so, in that I think they are specifically affected by blind effects, and this is not specifically a blind effect.
Right.
I will double-check that, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case.
Okay. How long do the hit points last from this leap? Until they're basically used, right?
I think at the moment on Lamania it might only be 12 seconds, but we'll take a look at that and kind of figure out what's going to be good for that.
And then, holy moly, 6-core SLA True Resurrection for a mere 25 spell points on a 10-second cooldown. You get True Res, which is really the best of all the reses.
Yeah. It is, it might be easy to look at that and say, well, I already have the True Resurrection spell. Sure, but now you have another copy of it on a separate cooldown. You can True Res without having to wait out the full cooldown, which can be very helpful as a dedicated healer.
It's been a while since I actually paid attention to the cooldown on True Res. That's more than 10 seconds, isn't it? I'm pretty sure that
I think it is. I don't recall offhand. I am quickly going to.
Yeah. And then there is a passive element for that as well, which will get you either +4 or Wisdom or Charisma. You'll get a +3 max caster level with all of your positive spells. Your Hope and Beacon abilities that scale with favored soul levels will now add epic levels as well, so you can scale that all the way up to 30.
Right. So if you're going pure favored soul in this tree, your beacons, which we've already talked about, get the benefit of your epic levels as well, so they'll keep on scaling up through epics, as well as the hope buffs, which are in the tree, which we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
Going back for a second, True Resurrection's base cooldown is 13 seconds.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So now you have another one on a 10-second cooldown.
Yeah, nice. All right, Tier 1, Good Hope SLA. Good Hope is pretty nice, and it's one of those things that if you're trying to buff up your rogue for traps is also kind of a nice thing
it's a bard spell, which is kind of a weird choice for this, but it was so thematic and fitting for the tree. It's very useful at low levels. It kind of peters out by high levels, but in terms of a first-level SLA, not the worst choice.
Yep. Confidence gives you concentration, diplomacy, and heal, and you also get +10 positive energy spell power with rank 3. Divine durability, 246 competence bonus to physical resistance rating, and gosh, I wish I was more prepared. There's several channels like competence bonus for physical resistance rating.
Competence bonus, yes. Yeah. This would not stack with a Warlock's Aura or a couple of other miscellaneous things.
Okay. Spell critical chance positive, +2%, flat out there, and 30, 60, 90 spell points. I'm assuming with the favored soul, it's doubled, similar to.
It is doubled from those listed values, so it's
right.
it's actually quite nice for your value there.
Tier 2, Close Wounds, SLA. That's a real quick kind of bring back to 1 hit point sort of thing that's out there.
Very fast, quick cast spell. Has uses on a lot of different builds.
Yep.
So.
Hope for Inspiration. Target ally gets a sacred bonus to all skills equal to +1 or equal to 1 plus 1/4 of your favored soul level for 18 seconds. Man,
yeah,
my favored soul rogue is going to be pretty happy with some of this, I think.
It'd be in this case. So this kind of brings us into the secondary focus of the tree.
Yeah.
One of the things we wanted to do is. It's going to vary by play style and build, but for the most part, a dedicated healer generally does things between healing because you don't necessarily, in most situations, need to be healing 100% of the time. And so one of the ways we tried to organize this tree is to make sure that if you wanted to combine the healing portion of this tree with being an offensive spellcaster and Angel of Vengeance, you could do that, or combine the healing in this tree with being a War Soul that does melee or ranged, you could do that. But if you didn't want to take on either of those roles, you had a secondary role available right in the tree that you could take if you wanted to. And so we decided to create a support role with stacking buffs that are relatively high in value, scale pretty well overall. These buffs stack with almost everything in the game, that have very short cooldowns, but you can keep them up on a couple of people. One person pretty easily, 2 people if you're really trying and aren't under a whole lot of pressure to heal immediately, 3 if you're crazy and really, really want to keep that up because of the timers involved.
Yeah. There's a part of me that feels, too, with this all skills, that includes UMD.
Yes,
so
it does.
Might help some folks who are looking to get a extra bump in their UMD skills for 18 seconds.
As a note, you can't cast these on yourself. It is purely a support thing. But if you have 2 people in this party that are both Beacons of Hope, you could cast them on each other, as well as keeping a good chunk of the party under these buffs at any given time.
That's a very good point, actually. I failed to read that section. Divine Durability 2, 2, 4, 6. Competence bonus to MRR, similar to the PRR, but in Tier 2 here. Spell crit chance, positive +2%. Might's Reward is a multi-selector that shares a cooldown and the same spell point cost as Divine Might. That's to prevent sort of some unintended power issues that otherwise might happen there. So what is it? You get a sacred bonus to positive spell power +5, either your strength, wisdom, or charisma modifier for 30, 60, 120 seconds. You choose when you're investing in that tree, or in that enhancement rather, whether you want it to proc on strength, wisdom, or charisma.
Right. So what this is it's anti-requisite with Divine Might, Know the Angles, a couple of the offensive things. But what you're getting is your ability score modifier, and hopefully what is your primary stat, in positive spell power, and you can keep that up pretty regularly for a pretty low spell point cost.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Tier 3, Hope for Protection. Target ally gains a sacred bonus to PRR MRR equal to 3 plus your favorite soul level for 18 seconds on a 6-second cooldown. So that doesn't stack, though, right?
That stacks with almost everything in the game. The only thing offhand I can think of that it does not stack with is Paladin's Sacred Defender MRR.
Okay.
PRR and MRR. Theirs is also typed Sacred, so if you've got a Paladin in the party, this doesn't do much for them unless you're a pure favored soul by like level 28 or so. Then you start outstripping their values. Otherwise, this does stack with almost everybody else in the game.
I'm just trying to think that if I cast on an ally, it lasts 18 seconds, was on a 6-second cooldown. I mean, presumably I could get 2, theoretically 3, but most likely 2. Would those 2 stack?
I mean, they would not stack multiple casting on the same target, but you can keep it up on 2 different targets.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Because it is a sacred bonus.
Tier 3, Efficient, Empower Healing. That's a meta magic that you'll get in that tree. Spell crit chance, positive +2%, and then an ability score multi-selector, similar to other +1s you see in all the enhancement trees, this one being Wisdom or Charisma. Tier 4, Death Ward SLA on a 4-second cooldown. Hope for Victory. Target ally gets a sacred bonus to melee and ranged power equal to 3 plus half your favorite soul level, and universal spell power equal to 6 plus your favorite soul level. Lasts for 18 seconds on a 6-second cooldown. And I assume similar to that, this is on multiple targets you could cast. It's not going to stack
Right, doesn't stack up on the same target, but you could keep this up on 2, maybe 3 at once if you're really on top of things, and aren't as hard pressed to be healing.
And I'm thinking, let's just say theoretically I'm a 20 level favored soul. That would be an extra 60 sacred bonus to melee and range power.
Right. If you had the capstone also, and you're adding your epic levels.
No, sorry, 30.
It would be 30.
Yeah.
Yes.
60 for USP.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Plus the base bonus.
Yep. Optimism. Every time you cast one of your hope abilities, you get a stack of rising bacon.
Yes.
Giving yourself +2 PRR, +2 MRR, and +1 AC. This stacks up to 10 times. Stacks fade away once every 12 seconds. Hope for success grants 3 stacks. So, you have there's a whole bunch. There's, hope for victory, hope for protection, hope for inspiration. All 3 of those really from the trees. Whenever you cast one of those, it's going to give you +2 PRR, +2 MRR, +1 AC. It will stack, but then it does fade away over time.
So essentially, if you're keeping up with the play style of casting a couple of these every couple of seconds, you eventually get a +22 PR and MRR and +10 AC, and that stacks with everything. So it'll help you keep alive as you're buffing and healing.
Nice. Spell crit chance positive, +2% in Tier 4 as well, and then an ability score multi-selector of Wisdom and Charisma. All right, now let's head to the Tier 5. Raise Dead SLA with a 15 spell point cost, 9-second cooldown. So if you want to invest fully in this tree, you'll get a True Res SLA and a Raise Dead SLA. That'll offer separate channels between your regular spells that you might be
Exactly, and there's a lot of people in the feedback for this thread that have said, why do I need a Raise Dead SLA? It's easily the worst of the raise spells, and you're getting a True Resurrection, one out of the capstone, but there's a number of builds that can really make use of this, especially if you are not taking that many favorite soul levels. There's a place for it.
Or if you're in a group with me and you've party wiped and we need to get everyone back up really quickly, you can't wait on those cooldowns on your spells. So you've got your 3 that you can do now from your spell list, and you Raise Dead, Resurrection, True Resurrection. And then now 2 more, so you could do 5 to basically bring up your full party. Boom, 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 boom. So,
right.
Yeah. Hope for success. Target ally gains +1 to critical threat range and multiplier with weapons for 18 seconds. Heal SLA. That's a pretty good one, too. Undying Beacon. Allies affected by your beacons gain unconsciousness range equal to 10 times your favored soul level. So does that mean they can go down to unconscious range 200?
300 if you took the capstone and are at level 30. Yes, this saves party wipes. Seen it happen in playtesting. It's quite good.
Nice. It does last for 12 seconds, refreshed if a target is affected by another beacon spell, though.
And Beacon of Grace only has a 6-second cooldown, so assuming that you're standing behind a good chunk of your party, you can keep this up relatively indefinitely.
All right, now Elizabeth over on Facebook had asked about this earlier in the conversation, but now's the time to talk about it. Wall of Healing.
Yeah.
What the heck is that?
So think of it like a wall of fire, except instead of fire, it's doing a cure moderate wound spell every 2 seconds to everything inside. So allies get healed, you get healed, undead take damage. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really pretty straight up. Wall that persists for 15 seconds. Allies and undead in the wall take a cure moderate wound spell every few seconds. That is impacted by, say, positive spell power and healing amp and all that sort of thing as well.
It is extremely good in practice.
Yeah. And that is the Beacon of Hope tree. We just debuted it last night on the Mania, so we would encourage everybody to please check it out on the Mania. But have you given any thought at this point? I suppose it's really too early to see if we might be tweaking it further or anything of that nature, right?
So we had a feedback round, not on the Mania, just on the forums itself, where we made a couple of little tweaks to a few things, as well as a result of internal playtesting, which we've been doing a lot of in the last week or two. I don't think there's been enough feedback yet from Lamania really for us to have committed to any particular changes, but there's a few things we're keeping an eye on.
Yep.
There's also a lot there's 3 other trees up here, and so we're kind of still taking in all the feedback, and players are really just now starting to dig deep into some of what's here since it went up so late last night.
So, wary of Jerry, long-term name there, has said, why does healing scale down per skull in Reaper? And that's sort of an off-topic subject, except that Beacon of Hope is likely to be seen as a way to help counter that healing penalty in Reaper for some of our characters.
I suppose it could be seen in that way. We generally have said that we don't balance enhancement trees against Reaper necessarily.
Right.
While there are some things that are obviously in any given tree going to be more advantageous in Reaper than others, this tree very much, if you build for it, can overheal in Elite, which means as you progress into Reaper, that overhealing kind of comes down into the normally and pretty required levels of healing. So
yep. And to answer the question, I mean, it was a design decision when we came out with Reaper that we wanted to make it more difficult to heal, and sorry if you don't like it. I guess. I'm sorry to be so flippant about it, but that's sort of the reality of it. Okay, so why don't we move on to the War Soul and Warpriest revamp. We're not, like I said, we're not going to go line by line on every one of these, but it is worth mentioning that we're updating the other trees as well. How extensive do these trees compare to some of the, frankly, extensive work to build a whole new tree here for Update 3?
Oh, right. These particular changes to Warpriest, War Soul, and Angel of Vengeance are significantly smaller than building a new tree from scratch. It was very much the case with these trees where some of their problems were they were just missing some things that other similar trees had, such as Angel of Vengeance not having any SLAs compared to a lot of other spell nuking trees, as well as some of their issues were some abilities were too expensive for what you got for them, and just generally needed tightening up.
Yeah. So I've been a long time kind of healer player myself, and War Soul and Warpriest have never been exactly bad trees, but they haven't really shined either in some ways. So
I've always found playing them to be a frustrating experience.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. It's one of those things where it doesn't hurt. I mean, it helps, but does it ever really help enough? Was always one of the issues.
No.
And so, what are we doing here?
Okay, so there's a couple of things going on here because we're dealing with what are now 2 trees. Late last year, we formally split Warpriest into Warpriest on the cleric side and War Soul on the favored soul side. And part of this pass, in addition to making both of those trees significantly better, involved a little bit more of a pronounced difference between the two. In general, our aim, and you might see a little bit more of this than is currently in there between now and live, is that Warpriest is a little bit more defensive and a little less offensive relative to War Soul, and War Soul is a little more offensive and a little less defensive relative to Warpriest.
Okay.
This kind of fits with their archetypes a little bit already, in that Cleric naturally gets heavy armor proficiency, whereas Favored Soul does not. You can take it, but they don't naturally get it. And so we're trying to skew into, a little bit into the medium armor archetype of War Soul, but give them a little bit more offense as a result, and conversely give Warpriest a little bit more defense.
All right.
In addition to just overall improving the tree, which we can kind of get into when we deep dive into some of these.
Yeah, let's just look a little bit at it. One thing that's different is the cores are now a multi-selector, both for melee or ranged.
Right.
Previously was just melee.
It was just melee, and we have the existence of the Silver Flame Deity, and so that never gelled quite well with anybody, I don't think. So we fixed that. We added a version of the first core, as well as some of the new abilities that support ranged. Not everything in here quite supports ranged, and we're still talking about a few of the abilities that don't, but at least now it's possible.
Smite Foe is something that when I have dipped into this tree, it's usually been for Smite Foe, so it's nice to see its cooldown has been reduced a little bit as well.
Yes.
Implacable Foe's cooldown reduced. Inflame is no longer an action boost, no longer has charges, but just has a plain 90-second cooldown.
Right. It was always kind of a weird action boost in that it applied to both you and your party. And so we decided to, rather than have it kind of be this weird outlier on the edge of the action boost economy to instead just make it an ability with a longer cooldown, but you can use it as often as it's off cooldown. And especially because we added some actual action boosts into the tree, which they kind of sorely needed, it made sense.
All right, so I'm trying to sort out this inflame saving throws and energy absorption stuff.
Okay, so this kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier, where some of the things in Warpriest and Warsoul were not bad on their own, but were so expensive to really invest in that they really weren't worth it. And so one of the things is Inflame had several upgrades to it that each had 3 ranks. So if you're going full tilt on Inflame, you were paying 9+ AP to get all that. In addition, we needed room in the tree for new stuff. So we took one of the abilities that upgraded Inflame and stuffed it into the other ability that upgraded Inflame and kept the action point cost the same. So now it is cheaper to fully upgrade Inflame, but you still get everything that you would now if you fully upgraded it.
Nice. I'm going to skip to Radiant Flourish because it's replacing a ability that was in the tree called Burden of Sin, and it's a multi-selector for melee and ranged. Adds a plus W attack damage and additional light damage that scales 200% with whatever you have higher, melee or ranged power. Also, small chance to blind non-boss enemies with no saving throw?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a pretty small chance, but it does happen.
All right. I know one question that I remember coming up in the Players' Council that I would expect would be asked here, too, is why is it scaling with melee range rather than light spell power?
So the balance on melee and range power versus spell power is exceedingly different. And we, I think about a year or two ago, really talked out here in the dev pit the philosophy about melee abilities that scale with spell power and to an extent spells that scale with melee and range power, and decided that kind of weird build disparity was difficult to manage in the long run. And so generally speaking, with probably a few exceptions when we get around to certain other trees or destinies or things like that, there may be times where we have exceptions, but in general, expect that melee and range attacks scale with melee and range power, even if they're doing elemental types of damage.
Great. Good to know. All right, Tier 4, Light Guard is gone, replaced with a 3, 6, or 10% double strike or double shot. It's a multi-selector, so you choose which one you want to take. New one, Silence the Wicked, is again multi-select melee ranged. It does plus 1, 2, 3 weapon damage. Affected enemy cannot cast spells for 4 seconds, and I assume, is this also non-bosses?
That is also non-bosses, yes.
Okay. And then it's got a cooldown based on whether it's melee or ranged. Tier 5, Wrathful Weapons. Light damage is now 10d6 light damage. That lasts for 12 seconds. Scales with the higher melee range power at 200%.
Right. So that's an ability that when you Vorpal with your favorite weapon, and we're trying to make that scale better, be a higher base damage, and generally be worth taking.
Okay. Otherwise, I guess not worth mentioning too much. Divine Power is now a sacred bonus to Strength, plus the base attack bonus it already gives.
Right. It was an enhancement bonus before, which mimicked the spell of the same name, but was almost completely worthless, because you're usually, if you care about Strength at all, you are already wielding something.
Yeah, exactly right. Otherwise, Warpriest is getting a multi-selector on some stats. Okay.
This is where we start getting into the differences between Warpriest and Warsoul. In this case, the core capstone, we've updated it for everybody, both Warpriest and Warsoul. In Cleric Warpriest, you have a choice between +2 Strength and +2 Con, or +2 Con and +2 Wisdom. So you are splitting stats a little bit, but as a cleric, those should generally both be useful to you, as well as both of those grant the effect of Implacable Foe, which is already in the tree.
Cool. We're also adding an action boost for melee range power to Tier 2 of Warpriest, and while wearing heavy armor, this is in Tier 5, you'll get a bonus to PRR, MRR, AC, and threat generation with melee and ranged attacks. And Divine Power is now 1 action point. So, yeah. not bad. War Soul is getting a +4 to Strength, Wisdom, Charisma.
That's a multi-selector where you're picking one of those, and generally it'll be in whatever stat you're making the most use out of.
And the War Soul is similar. Its action boost, rather than melee range power, is going to be haste. And on tier 5, instead of being heavy armor, it's medium armor, because favored souls with medium armor. You'll get not quite as much. Actually, no, it's a different bonus.
It's
double strike,
yeah.
double shot, and +5 to confirm critical hits and critical hit damage, which is not insignificant whatsoever.
Right.
So.
Yep. We're still playing with that ability a little bit. I'm not entirely sure it's quite enough to entice people to stick with medium armor in the long run, but we'll be continuing to take a look at it.
It certainly doesn't hurt, especially with Divine Power. It is sticking at 2 action points, but it will also grant a competence bonus to crit multiplier with your weapons.
Right.
So,
so clerics, since we added domains last year, have had access to competence bonuses to crit through the war domain, but favored souls don't. So they are getting it through the war soul tree. Their divine power is sticking at 2 action points, but gives the crit. Clerics is dropping to 1 action point, does not give crit.
As Set says, darn, I'm going to use the nice word of it. Favored soul plus ruin plus hellball is going to be a beast.
Ooh, probably.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there. The SLAs on separate cooldowns, this is DDO Gamer from YouTube, will make for easy recovery from party wipe with a single gibbers. That's probably true.
Yeah.
Yep. And, so Lance has a comment, really, from Facebook that this person loves the favored soul class, but found by the time they reached level 12, they were more and more of an evoker and healer. It wasn't worth trying to keep swinging a sword in, going past level 12, so we'll see how these changes go. That is really part of the reason for this, is to,
that's part of the
to
reason
give them a good boost on melee or ranged.
You
if
know,
they want to go
previously, especially if you were sticking to pure favored soul, you had the smite foe button as your only really, attack button from this tree. It had a long cooldown, I believe 18 seconds previously. Did +2W and not a whole lot of other offensive options. And so now, as a favored soul swinging a sword around, you have Radiant Flourish on a 6-second cooldown where you're getting +3W and a bunch of light damage that you can keep spamming that attack. You have the 12-second cooldown of Smite Foe, and then the longer cooldown on Radiant Flourish. So you have much more of a rotation. You have more +Ws coming into your attacks, as well as additional riders of damage and effects. Plus you have an action boost. So
nice.
Yeah, between those things, you should see somewhat of an uptick in the damage you're dealing.
I'm trying to bring up our Angel of Vengeance thing here. Give me just a quick second. Why are you not working? There we go. Good. All right, so what's the deal with Angel of Vengeance? What are we trying to do here?
So Angel of Vengeance, we're trying to increase overall DPS and efficiency of this tree. Give them some SLAs because they were one of the only offensive spellcasting trees with no SLAs, as well as sort out some of the general weirdness in parts of this tree that made it both difficult to use and difficult to balance properly.
And then also giving them a better capstone.
Yeah, I mean, that is part of it.
Yeah. All right, so in general here, we are now increasing the trigger rate of vengeful magic effects. That's in the core. You have to remind me on what that one does. I don't actually remember.
Oh, yeah. It grants some spellcasting bonuses when you dip below certain health thresholds.
Okay.
And those health thresholds are now higher than they were before. I know that health thresholds aren't everybody's cup of tea. We might consider increasing the effects of those a little bit more, but it is sort of a part of the tree that we would kind of like to keep.
Hey, so. I go below certain health thresholds quite often.
Right.
Yeah. But it also grants a passive light and alignment spell power. So,
yes.
Angel of Vengeance here has it's really been the light power spell, the enhancement tree for favored souls here, and so I think that's going to continue in this. Archon's light spell will benefit from 100% spell power and spell crit. That's twice what it was.
Right. So you should see higher numbers when your shoulder Archon fires off beams.
Yep. Okay, so Ascendancy's really getting a streamline here. It was based on deities and things like that, and now it's really a +2 to all skills, plus 20 universal spell power, and a Searing Light SLA that costs nothing.
Right. So before, this was a different SLA and skill package per deity, which was fairly complicated to kind of figure out in terms of the build process. It was very complicated to balance. We did a pass on some of these things when we did the new deities a couple years back, and it was extremely complicated. Some were just better than others, and it was hard to alter the balance to make sure that some people weren't just getting placed worse off than others based on their deity choice. I understand that some people like the flavor of that, but overall it's better for this tree as a whole and Favored Souls as a whole if there's just something universally useful here instead. Searing Light is one that actually I think the Players' Council suggested that we put here.
Yep.
Light offensive spell. If you've come this far to the level 20 capstone, you're probably casting light spells as a general purpose. So
yeah, and this Searing Light will scale with light spell power in
Yes.
that too. So and it costs you absolutely nothing. So even when you are completely out of spell points,
this
can
tree is
cast
extremely
this, so.
spell point efficient now,
Yeah.
and you have, if that is a Favored Soul, your big boatload of spell points. We had some playtests going through using this tree as a primary offensive spellcaster, where in entire dungeons you were using far less than half of your spell points.
Silent from Twitch, sounds like light immune monsters will kill Favored Soul. I don't know that that's any different from what it is currently. Favored Soul do need other options generally.
Yeah.
Fire is often one.
I mean,
that they'll take
you have
and things
Comet
like
Fall in
that.
this tree.
Yeah. You got a weapon.
And you have a number of other Favored Soul actual spells at your disposal as well, and presumably other party members.
And a weapon, probably, in your hand.
Maybe.
You can also
I mean, as
bash
an Angel
them
of
with
Vengeance,
something.
I mean, you could go the route of doing some offensive attacking along with your spellcasting, but you might also be a Beacon of Hope, Angel of Vengeance cross.
Yeah.
So maybe not.
You can punch them to death. That's what you can do. All right, Tier 1, Nimbus of Light, SLA. This is a new one there. Animus and Scourge combined into one ability with both sets of effects.
Right.
Just Reward was not aptly named. Is that what's going on?
Just Reward, this was another incident of making things more worth the action points and clearing space in the tree for new things. So we took Just Reward and we put it into the first rank of Articles of Faith. So it's not gone, just moved.
Okay. Sunbolt SLA. So really we're getting a lot of light spell SLAs added to this tree here. Wand and Scroll Mastery moved down to Tier 2. Comet Fall SLA at Tier 5. And then new Archon's Fury requires Summon Archon.
So this is a toggleable ability, and when you turn it on, your Shoulder Archon, while it's running, every time it fires one of those lasers at target, it will also apply a dot of fire damage. And every time it fires on that enemy, it adds another stack of this fire damage that builds up and builds up. That damage also scales with your spell power. So this is pretty useful against bosses, especially. It does drain spell points for every shot as a result, as it is relatively strong. You're not spending time casting this. It's in addition to whatever else you're already casting, because the Archon is casting it for you. But it's stacking up a lot of damage fairly quickly at the expense of some spell points, which generally most Favored Souls should be able to afford at least through a boss fight.
Do you know if that's affected by, say, the efficient meta magic?
I don't believe it is, no.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't believe meta magics apply to that specific effect, but I don't think anything functionally reduces that cost.
Yeah. Other party members, what, like hirelings? Yeah, it could be hirelings. No, you're an owl bear, and you get your panther, and you get that. No, I'm kidding. Let's see. Trying to find some non-off-topic questions. Appreciate the thought on the suggestion to have more bank space. That's something we are always looking to hopefully do. DDO Gamer wants to know, when we're looking at internal healing numbers for testing, this is from YouTube, do we care about what that is? I mean, are we doing that test on R10 Reaper? We're not.
Not generally on R10
Yeah.
Reaper. Most of our internal playtests were run somewhere between R1 and R6. And I have occasionally stepped into R10 Reaper to see what the effects of those things are. But we don't generally playtest in R10 Reaper. But we are playtesting in Reaper.
And we would not. That's true. But it's also to state that when we're building up an enhancement tree, which is really a tree that you would get largely during your heroic levels
Right.
and things like that, we're not gearing the game for R10.
Right.
That's really the bleeding edge for some of our best players. But that would not be really appropriate to balance that as the norm.
Right. We want to know how it performs in Reaper 10. We also want to know how it performs on Heroic Casual and kind of everywhere in between.
Joe Hoffman is like, close wounds, question mark? Did I miss why this spell isn't really underpowered? So close wounds is, you're right that a lot of people don't recognize it, I think, but it is a very quick cast spell that you can do to very quickly bring a party member up from in-cap. And I've seen it prove quite effective myself. Often used in conjunction with other things, like say you're a Radiant Servant, you got someone going down, boom, and then you walk over to them and they start to get healed up. Or you've got multiple people going down at once. You know, boom, that person's back from in-cap, they can chug a potion or do whatever self-healing they want to do while you're dealing with someone else who just went down or something like that.
It is, for its intended purpose, a lot more useful at low levels than higher. There are builds that use it in Epic for various reasons. But ultimately, it still might be the kind of SLA that you use at low levels and then take out of your build by higher levels, and that's fine. There's a place for that kind of enhancement.
Yeah.
So,
have we ever considered an alternative to the War Domain level 5 feat? You gain proficiency in all martial and exotic weapons. It's kind of sad for many builds. Man, I gotta disagree with you there, John. I love the War Domain level 5 tier. If we got rid of that, I would be one very sad person. Proficiency, remember, proficiency in all martial and all exotic weapons.
it gives clerics the flexibility to, if they're really trying to use a weapon that isn't their favorite weapon, which is a nice thing that they have that favored souls, I know some favored souls wish they had. But
my
overall,
favorite soul loves it.
We're pretty comfortable with the overall power and utility of the War Domain.
Yeah. I mean, for example, my favorite soul used it to switch his one-handed weapons to Kopesh for free.
Oh, yeah.
And then also not have to worry about whether it's a shuriken or a throwing star or whatever for my little plinker, you know, whenever I need to do that.
Definitely one of the advantages of it.
Yeah.
And it may not be for everybody, especially if you are making a build that uses a weapon you're already proficient with or your deity's favored weapon.
Yep.
But that doesn't change that it's still a very useful component of an otherwise very, very powerful domain.
Yep. Yamaniras wants to have the level lowered on Leap of Faith to level 12 to match other classes, basically abundant steps and all that sort of thing. We'll take that under consideration, I guess, but I don't really see us doing that.
Yeah. Don't think I've seen other people bring that up, but it's something we could potentially discuss.
I'm just kind of looking at that. Is that Cometfall SLA applied to hirelings like Larafay, who constantly spam them to drain her spell points? She doesn't need Cometfall as an SLA. It's in her personality to just spam that. That's literally the nature of that.
I'm pretty sure if we gave her the SLA, she would spam the spell anyway.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That is the point of Larafay. If you don't like it, don't get to Larafay. Yeah.
I'm just going to update her contract description to say, just so you know.
It already does. Really.
She's going to cast Cometfall.
I mean, if you read the description of Larafay, it's basically just saying, this is what's going to happen. So, you know, you've been warned. Thank you for the Radiant Sorrow we gave clerics a while back. It helps keep the entire party up and not kill my cleric's mana so fast. When we are responsible for the entire party, it sure helps. So thank you to keep it coming with things like that. Really appreciate that. All right, any final thoughts here? I guess we are taking a look. This just debuted last night on Lamania, so we would love to see you actually go to the Lamania test server and check this stuff out in a real environment and give us some feedback on it. You know, a playtest is worth 1,000 words easily, and I know that this Lamania cycle is a little harder with the need to reinstall. Really unfortunate that is, you know, how this cycle is going, but we would love it if any of you get the chance to come test out some of this stuff and let you know what you think after giving it a spin on Lamania. Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. And let me just I'll mute my mic real quick. Cool. All right, we have got about 8 minutes here. We talked a long time, but we had 4 trees to get through here. So that was really want to appreciate thank Steelstar for really giving up his lunch for this. We've got some pretty exciting things happening with update 39. The big question I saw in chat is when is update 39? Stay tuned. We have not announced anything yet. This is just our very first Lamania preview. That said, we're probably looking July sometime. Because you assume we got at least 1 or 2 more rounds of Lamania. That'll probably carry us into early July. And then we got the July 4th holiday, and I don't know. I were a betting person. Yeah. Ah, I got it. So Quentin is here to answer all of the questions that we're not supposed to talk about.
Yes. The surprise is not coming. I don't have any surprises.
No surprises here. Okay, a quick note on the bonus this weekend is a 30% Guild Renown boost. Also, quick reminder, if you have 24 hours, well, not quite 24 hours, I guess 15-ish to 18-ish hours to get the Mimic Hunt and Treasure Hunters boost on.
What day is it?
Yeah, it's Wednesday, so sometime on Thursday morning it'll get shut off. So if you want to get this Mimic Hunt and Treasure Hunters boost stuff in now, do it. Then we're going to transition to a Guild Renown plus 30% through Sunday. All right, with me here is Quentin. Really appreciate you joining me here, Lynnabel. And we are here to talk about loot. You are not on camera. You are on audio only. Why don't we talk about... I mean, there's so much new quest named loot. I kind of think I'm going to hang off on that just due to time for next week when we actually have content stuff too to talk about. So why don't we take a look at 2 things. Crystal Cove loot is the first one. So you decided... Did you do most of the work on that?
Yeah. In fact, I did it back in January, and then abruptly had to go finish college or something. So there's... but unfortunately, without the rest of the event hookups, a lot of that work, since Steelstar was busy doing the rest of the systems for the game. But TLDR, yes, I put the entire new Crystal Cove together. And don't worry, if you liked the old stuff better, you can still get the old stuff. Steel actually put the old box somewhere in the cove. I believe it's at a dusty corner in the... I think you put some walls around it. If you really want to find it, you can do that. We're not going to stop you, but some of those items are really bad. But just in case. Just in case.
In case you have something partially upgraded, maybe, and you just want to go with what you have.
I put together some catch-all recipes, so you can talk... When Crystal Cove turns on, you can talk to Euphonia, and Euphonia will go... Here's how Crystal Cove goes, and then you go, I would like to turn my old items into new items, and then you can put your old items in, and regardless of their upgrade tier, they will condense down into their level blocks. So we're still keeping 4, 8, 12, 16, all the way up to 20. We also have level 28 items now, and only the level 28 versions of the weapons will be sentient. As with all of our event items, only the highest tier of level banded items are the sentient weapons. But if you have like a level 24 twice upgraded swashbuckler, you can turn that into a level 24 new swashbuckler, or if a level 24 non-upgraded swashbuckler, just turn it into the new stuff, and it's all bound to account, including the rune arm, and hopefully better.
And is there a new collectible cost for that, or is that just something you can do?
That's a great question. Steve and I have to hash that out probably soon, very soon, because we had to go build the rest of them. There's a lot of items in Crystal Cove.
There is, and not just Crystal Cove, but we did update 39 in that. So what in general? Like I said, we only have a few minutes here, so I want to go too much into all this stuff. But in general, what was your philosophy in building the level 28 versions, and then taking a look at some of the items as have been sat now for 5 years this year?
Oh, so. Some of the old Crystal Cove stuff is just ancient, and so our new item paradigms, in order to avoid some serious itemization problems, is unless it's a caster staff, we don't go above 4 distinct enchantments without a very specific reason. So part of the problem is that some Crystal Cove items are desirable because they have a lot of little bonuses and a variety of smaller stats. So picking and choosing the most prominent ones that I suppose, have the soul of the item and then bringing them up to normal standards and making sure that it fits in the itemization plan that we have for a variety of different level blocks. So the hardest part is definitely paring down a whole bunch of bad stuff into some smaller amounts of good stuff.
In general, when we're looking at the items that have been available in Crystal Cove, how much are we seeing essentially completely new items, and how much is really level 28 tiered up versions of existing abilities on the items?
So, there are, in Crystal Cove, there are very few, like, static abilities that we really could pull through. Unfortunately, so we're trying to move away from old-style upgrade tiers because there are some, it's confusing. It's very confusing to move through Crystal Cove right now. We don't do a very good job of explaining how the pieces fit together and having different upgrade tiers, and internally, they are not different items along the upgrade tiers. They are the base item that has then had properties added to it through a crafting system. So, for example, if you accidentally lose a buckler or you delete it accidentally, and it might not come back the same. And this is a problem that we are fixing item scheme by item scheme. And so as a consequence, to avoid all of that nonsense, the items for the new Crystal Cove are completely new. They are entirely new. They have been remade from the ground up. And to answer the question in chat, Impulse is in Glass Cannon because Impulse is bludgeoning spell power, and the exploding cannon shot uses bludgeoning spell power in order to drive the majority of its damage.
Nice. And then what did happen to the intelligence on the spyglass?
We could only put 4 things, and a clicky/secret door thing is part of those things. If there's enough want of it, we can swap some things around. It's not too late. It'll be a little too late when it actually goes live, because changing items that are already in circulation is a little tricky. But before it goes live, send me constructive criticism. I'm willing to talk. I've already done a little bit of changes with the U39 stuff. Although it's very difficult. Going above 4 enchantments is like kind of the hard line. We don't go above Kenneth crafting for heroic scaling, and we don't go above 4 enchantments, period. But I am 100% open to criticism on these. There's a lot of items.
I think you're going to hear, because like Silent was saying, I rely on the intelligence from that spyglass. And I know historically that spyglass, that was often why a lot of people were taking
Well, I have never once used one in the game, but this is all news to me.
I actually have one. Let's talk. I actually have one on my own character that I haven't actually cared so much about the intelligence nowadays, because we do have so much more sources of that sort of thing, but it's still not terrible.
Well,
so the other thing I want to know while I have time is, what did you do to my favorite swashbuckler?
Your favorite wait.
That swashbuckler shield is one of my favorite items in the entire game. Okay, how is it better?
It had old poopy numbers, and we put some better non-poopy numbers on there. We turned the bad numbers into the good numbers. Or more accurately, we left the old numbers where they were on the old shield on the off chance you really liked those old numbers, even though they are just lower numerically. But if you would like the old shield, we're not stopping you. We're going to put a little bit of a jumping thing, a bit of a wall, I believe, I believe still put barrels in front. You're going to have to find it. It's in a dusty corner.
What about that daze ability that the swashbucklers always had?
Guard breaking still there. Don't worry about it.
Yep.
And that will only ever be on bucklers and that one rapier. Whoops. That's
I know, right?
I know, right?
Swashbuckler with a swashbuckler. You're doing a lot of dazing,
Well,
and then you can do your coup de grace.
Yes.
So.
It is another thing in that guard breaking the ability is blindingly, massively, incredibly overpowered. It is just one of the best things in the game, period. And maybe we should stop putting it on things, but I really like bards, so I'm not really that inclined. Like, I'm willing to let my bias show.
Yeah. You can't take it away now. So, question from chat here. What about the trinkets? We've left them intact,
They're
right?
not changing at all.
Yep.
That is an entirely that's a very complicated crafting system, and in order to update that, it would just be remaking it, and at a certain point, right now, crafting, there are better options available already in the game. If you we haven't hashed out whether or not trinkets are still required for upgrading, or not upgrading, but still required for creating items, but hat crafting and trinket crafting and all of that miscellaneous Crystal Cove stuff that you guys enjoyed, that's staying the same. The actual items that are the big draw of the reward, those are getting moved up to modern values.
Okay, very cool. And when is Crystal Cove coming back? We don't yet have it scheduled, but we are waiting until after Update 39 so that this work can go in there. I would imagine we'd be looking in the relatively near future after Update 39 came out. But that's really a discussion we'll have to have on the
I know right
marketing
now,
side here.
if we went live, everyone's current Crystal Cove items would fall out of data. So we don't want to do that. We're definitely going to do a little bit more work on that before we delete people's inventories, which I hear players don't like. They don't delete things.
Don't delete
Don't
things,
delete.
yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Well, it depends. Like, if you see it falling down a cliff getting smaller and smaller, going, no.
So if an item falls out of data, it's not even a deletion. It will just leave behind a string table error that will yell at you. And then if you delete it, it will probably crash your game, and then you come back and it'll be gone. So we try to avoid doing that ever, I think. We never once have wanted to do that. I don't think that's ever been an intentional part of our designs. The moral is we still need to do some courses and works in Crystal Cove, but it is coming soon.
Yep.
TM.
All right. And I'll probably have you back on, if not next week, in the relatively near future. We can talk a little bit about, we're updating the Fjarlund Carnival loot,
Yes.
and we also then have new Update 39 here loot as well. And can we break some news about that thing you showed me yesterday?
Wait, what thing?
The collectibles?
With the that's a great question. But we can totally talk about this.
Yeah.
So I've run it by some people, and they say that this should probably theoretically cause no problems, which means that it's going to break everything. But because, you know, the last time I tried to change something in core, it was hitboxes on doors and that worked fantastic. But so collectible bag sorting right now is done by a major and minor key system that corresponds to the NPC that you turn the collectibles in for stuff. And collectibles turning in for this stuff, some players like that, yes, but their primary use now in modern DDO is for Kenneth crafting, and as such they're sorted internally and I suppose externally on the wiki by the rarity system and by a certain set of 6 tiers. So right now, it's very difficult from the red bag interface to tell which particular collectible is rarer than others, and so I've gone through and all 245 different collectibles have put in new... Yeah, I know, it was better than 3... I spent 3 hours with Torque copying and pasting doors, but the collectible bags, red bags, will now sort by tier of crafting and then following that, rarity. So it'll be easy to tell which shards go where or how easy to correspond to crafting. It'd be a lot easier to parse red bags now. And also, we've put a lot of, like, the new collectibles that No Worries put together. Those have been tagged in tier 6 appropriately, so there's not just in a weird miscellaneous folder that I can't figure out how to make stop showing up, but I'll work on that. And also, event items are sorted a little bit better. The whole thing has been a little bit more bulletproof, but yes, red bags sort better.
It'll basically... And now, we should note 2 things. One, no release date on this yet. If we can, there'll be an update 39, but we'll have to see. You know, at this point, it's too early a change to even know if we have, like you said, didn't break everything.
Yes. So right now,
But theoretically.
Yeah. The cornerstone of DDO, as it's been explained to me, is that 1, doors, and 2, bags. And I have now almost broken both of those, which is a great start.
Don't forget the time mushrooms crashed
the mushrooms,
the
those are also doors, obviously.
the mushrooms are doors.
The
That's
mushrooms
right.
are
What
doors.
was I thinking?
Clearly. This is actually, it's incredible. Adding in our new set bonus tech, I mistyped something in set bonus. So now there's 2 versions of the filigree. It's a great time.
Yeah.
So we're just going to release more things.
You have your work cut out for you. But theoretically, this is something that if it all checks out with Keyway and passes through all the checks, I took a look at it yesterday. Really, it helps organize your bags. It helps you understand, hey, I got something rare, and it also helps you know, okay, I need kind of a lower or higher tier collectible. What do I have on this sort of thing? So it's a really nice system there. I appreciate you joining me here today, Lynnabel.
Yeah, well, I always like being part of the spotlight, so if I can wedge my way through a window and show up in an interview.
Well, I'm sure we'll have you back on in the next week. I know next Wednesday, even if we don't have our content up, which we probably will, but even if we don't, we still have more stuff to talk about here, because we can talk about the loot, we can talk about Fjarlund Carnival stuff, and we can maybe even talk about a thing that we haven't mentioned yet to the live servers. The big surprise that didn't make it in time for this server here. But okay, so thank you very much, Lynnabel.
No problem.
And thank you very much for watching the weekly Wednesday lunchtime live stream here on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Give us a follow, give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube to get these videos in your feed. I will see you back next Wednesday. You can find our full schedule over on the Twitch page. Until next time, have fun all.